Hello YouTube. This video is entitled Nathan Oakley Can't Parent, but it's actually a video for all people who think the earth is flat or claim to think the earth is flat who have children. I'm going to be reading from something that I've written because I want to keep myself on topic and as concise as possible. I may ad-lib occasionally. Forgive me. I've resisted until now the temptation to weigh in on the public criticism of Nathan Oakley for apparently smacking his very young daughter during a live stream on his channel, and I've resisted that temptation for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I was shocked and angered by what I heard, and so I wanted my initial anger to subside a little before I made any comment. Secondly, I have a wider comment that I wanted to make on the subject of children in the flat earth community, and I didn't want that comment to get lost in the tide of outrage that followed the audible smack I heard on Nathan's channel. Firstly, let's deal with what actually happened on Nathan's live stream debate. You'll see debate in inverted commas frequently. That's because a debate is a structured discussion which is designed to be fair to both sides, and what happens on Nathan's channel is not designed to be fair at all. But that's another subject. I'm going to play a short clip. It's actually not that short, it's a few minutes long, but please listen to all of it. That includes the smack. Now, I realise that some videos that contain this have been taken down for infringing YouTube community guidelines. I'll take the risk whether this one gets taken down or not. I want you to listen carefully to the clip and consider the following points. Nathan is involved in a discussion with a guest about the Coriolis effect, in which he becomes increasingly angry. Nathan's daughter can be heard in the background, apparently amusing herself. Nathan briefly breaks off from what has become an abusive tirade directed at one of his guests to explain that as soon as he gets stroppy, this is a word he uses, you can look stroppy up in the dictionary. It means to get angry or irritated or annoyed. His daughter starts playing with his touchscreen. So Nathan is admitting that he is angry and that his daughter is doing something he doesn't want her to do. We hear what sounds like Nathan getting up from his sofa, and it's not unreasonable to assume it's his sofa because that seems to be the place he presents his videos from, his live streams. Very important point is that his daughter begins to cry before the sound of the smack is heard. Shortly after the smack, she cries more loudly. The contributor, who's the subject of Nathan's verbal abuse, definitely heard what was said because he says, "Oh my God." Nathan says the word careful a couple of times, I think, after the smack while his daughter is crying. Presumably this is directed at his daughter, and he seems to be intending to return to the debate as if nothing happened. His daughter starts to cry quite loudly, and it's clear that Nathan at this point and his co-presenter, I'll call him his co-presenter, this is the YouTuber Sleeping Warrior, who had also been involved in the discussion about the Coriolis effect, they both go quiet for quite a long time. So they're not on mic, they've either muted their mics or not saying anything. The guest is given a surprisingly long time to make their point, and they express some surprise when they get to the end of their point. Eventually, a second co-presenter steps in along with another friendly guest, and they the second co-presenter, when they step in, friendly guest steps in first, the co-presenter steps in second and appears to try to change the subject. And Nathan eventually returns to the discussion, which returns the Coriolis effect. And this is just over 3 minutes after he initially left it. He continues as if nothing had happened. So I'll play the clip now, and I'll try not to interrupt or contribute very much.
Can't help yourself but have your mic open while you eat your stupid crisps, you bloody idiot. Right, Rumpus, all necessary conditions for that ball to deflect are met. We have 2 reference frames, the roundabout and the atmosphere. Simple.
Got 3. Oh, if I'm being kicked for some reason.
Oh, joined.
Oh. Right, so there are 3 reference frames.
No, there aren't. There are 2, roundabout and atmosphere. That's all we need to look at. There aren't 3. The ball is not a reference frame.
Yes, it is, because the definition of a reference frame is whether or not you're moving with respect to something else. And the ball is moving with respect to the rotating roundabout, and it's also moving with respect to the Earth. So you've got 3.
Yeah, but the ball isn't an independent reference frame.
Anthony, the definition of a reference frame is something that's moving with regard to those things in a reference. I mean, the ball.
Yeah, so the ball would be the something.
No, yeah, it's moving with regard to both the roundabout and the ground. Do you accept that?
Yeah, but it's not
Great.
a
In which case,
it's something.
And anything that moves.
Because you don't understand the definition.
Yeah, anything that moves, Rumpus, for the love of God. Anything that moves, that would be the ball, you bloody idiot.
And it's moving with.
Anything that moves is not the reference plane. You are a thicko.
No, you don't understand.
I do understand. I understand implicitly. Anything that moves through a reference plane, that would be a ball.
No, anything that's moving.
Yeah, that would be a ball in this instance. Okay, so we established the thing moving now is going to be the ball. Okay, Rumpus?
And it's moving with respect to 2 reference frames.
Right, so the ball moves with regards to the reference frame. It moves with regards... Get a stroppy, my kid starts playing with my touch screen. Typical. So the ball is the thing that's moving, Rumpus.
I missed that. Oh my God. Yeah. Right.
Careful.
Anything that's moving with regard to something else is...
No.
The ball being thrown off a roundabout is in a different reference frame both to the ground and to the roundabout. In the case of firing a bullet on the surface of the Earth, there are only 2 reference frames because you've got atmosphere and the ground are in the same one, and then there's the bullet. But on the roundabout there are 3 because the ground is not is moving differently to the roundabout. In the case of an atmosphere, the ground and the air are all moving together in one. So you lose one of the reference frames. You've got an merry-go-round situation. So you've got the 2 reference frames that Nathan was talking about to get the Coriolis effect. You've got the Earth and the atmosphere rotating, and then the gun immediately the bullet fires, it's in its own reference frame, and then you have 2 reference frames, 1, the bullet, and 2, the Earth and atmosphere combined. So you've got 2 reference frames, and then you can have your Coriolis effect. On the merry-go-round, there are 3 reference frames. The ground, along with the atmosphere, the rotating roundabout, and the ball. You've got 3. You've got a bonus one, but you do not need any more than 2. And so in the case of the atmosphere and firing a bullet, you've got 2. You've got all the reference frames you need, and the bullet moves with regard to the atmosphere. Just because it goes through it does not mean to say it's part of that reference frame.
If you had read my comment, Nathan, that I made last night, I explained that to you. That talking about a roundabout complicates the situation because, as Rumpus said, you have 3 reference frames then. You have 2 rotating frames and a translational frame.
What year are we in, George?
Say what?
What century are we in?
Oh, come on, get off it.
Come on.
Anyway.
No. Come on. I just want to know what century we're in.
What's that got to do with the discussion, Randy?
Yeah, it's the 21st century, okay?
Hey!
All right.
You only just found that out last night.
Yeah, good woman in there, Ranty. Well distracted.
Did you only just find that out last night?
You trying to
Why
deflect?
are you trying to distract the discussion?
Because
you know?
you're
Okay,
coming
let
in
me-
and
I'll
it's
bring it back.
and you don't even know what
Are
century
you
it is.
frightened of the debate, Ranty?
I'll bring it back.
Listen,
I'll
I'll
bring
have
it
a
back.
conversation with somebody who knows what century it is.
He knows far more about everything than you do.
Sure, he does. He doesn't even know what century he's in.
He knows so much more than you, Ranty. You don't
Rumpus,
appreciate it.
let's not address them. Let's focus on the Coriolis.
Okay, I'll just be the guinea pig here. I'll be the guinea pig here. So we have a closed system where the Earth and the atmosphere are locked in tandem, and they are moving in uniform speed. Okay.
There's a slight, sorry to interrupt you, but there's a slight variation. With winds, of course, they do move with respect to the Earth's surface and the
Yes,
atmosphere.
yes,
So there's a slight
that's-
complication there, and that's why
no,
you get
it's-
Coriolis affecting winds. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay.
But
It's-
in general, the atmosphere as a whole moves with the surface of the
Okay,
Earth. But there are
okay.
variations within
I
the
understand. You don't have to keep explaining.
Brilliant.
yourself.
Well done.
I understand.
I'm glad you
Okay.
understood that, because a lot of people don't.
No, he doesn't stand under it. He doesn't agree with it. He just understood what you explained.
No, people don't understand the
No,
explanation.
you don't need to put words in his mouth. Just because he says I understand what you have explained doesn't mean he stands under it. It doesn't mean he agrees. Right.
You don't
He doesn't
understand what I
agree.
just said.
He just understands what you have explained. He doesn't agree
Alright,
with you.
So I have a question for you, Rumpus. Then,
Okay. All right.
when you
So-
fire the gun,
So that's the amount of the live stream that I want to play. I've realised the person I've described here as a friendly guest. I thought it was somebody else. It's actually just a guest and not a flat earther who chips in, and then the co-presenter does try to change the subject. And Nathan returns, seemingly with a little trepidation in his voice when he begins, and he rapidly realizes he's not going to be challenged and just sails on into the continuing discussion. I've got no idea how that discussion concluded. So what can I conclude with reasonable certainty from this clip? Well, I conclude three things. Nathan was angry with the contributor on his live stream debate, again inverted commas. He uses the word stroppy himself, and he was clearly getting angry with that person. Secondly is that he did smack his daughter. I think the audio is quite clear, and there's only one conclusion that can be reasonably drawn from listening to that audio. And the third thing is, I conclude that his daughter knew she was going to be smacked before the blow was delivered. She starts to cry before the sound of the smack. And she would only do that if she knew what was coming. I can also speculate. I admit that my point 3 above does call for some speculation, but I think it's very reasonable. I can also speculate that Nathan allowed his anger at the guest, who was simply presenting a point of view, and could be heard doing so pretty calmly through most of the discussion there. It's difficult to stay calm when someone is trying to talk over you, but when allowed to speak on his own, he remained very calm and wasn't angry or abusive at all. Nathan allowed his own anger at this reasonable guest to affect the way he disciplined his very young, I think she's under 2 years old, daughter. Put it in another way, because he was angry with someone else, he lashed out at her. Second bit of speculation is that Nathan did not initially think that his actions had been heard. He often mutes his microphone when he's not speaking, possibly because there's noise from his daughter or, for whatever reason. And he may have thought he had muted the microphone. He seems to want to return to the discussion immediately without any expression of regret or any explanation for what had happened. As soon as he realised the smack and the crying had been heard, now this I am assuming here, I am speculating, but presumably his co-presenter told him, or someone told him. He then muted his microphone and remained muted for about 3 minutes. Now, he might have simply muted his microphone because it was obvious to him at that point that his daughter was not going to stop crying, and he needed to either get her to stop crying or to move her to somewhere else so that she couldn't be heard. I don't know exactly what he did, but his actions are consistent with him being told he'd been heard. The fact that his co-presenter, who had been involved in the discussion, we actually heard him involved in the clip that I played, did not contribute, did not interrupt the guest as they presented their case about reference frames, suggests that he was muted at the same time, or perhaps was conversing with Nathan by a separate means. I think Nathan realised that his behaviour would receive criticism, probably as a result of conversation with his co-presenter, and spent some time thinking about how to react, and probably decided the best thing to do was just pretend that nothing had happened. Now, I'll preface this next bit by saying that I'm not a lawyer. This is my understanding of the law as it pertains to smacking children in the UK. I don't know whether Nathan is aware, but it is illegal to smack a child in the UK. Now, the case in England, and I assume that Nathan lives in England, is slightly different to the rest of the UK, in that although it is illegal to smack a child, there is a legal defence of reasonable punishment. What that means is that if you are charged with smacking a child in the UK, you have to establish that it was a reasonable punishment in order to be acquitted of that charge. It is not the case necessarily that you can simply say it was reasonable punishment, therefore you can't charge me. It's a legal defence, not another defence. Now, of course, it's highly unlikely that Nathan will be charged with the offence of smacking his child on the basis of just the audio evidence that we have heard here today. But Nathan, please bear in mind that smacking your child is illegal. And the fact that she cried before you started to smack her, before you did smack her, suggests that it's not the first time you've done that. Regardless of whether Nathan committed a crime or not in the eyes of the law, I find his actions to be totally unacceptable and utterly disgraceful. And this opinion not only applies to Nathan's actions during the live stream, i.e. the smack itself, and the way he carried on in that live stream as if nothing had happened, but also to his behaviour later, when he commented on videos that others made criticising him with the phrase, "Thanks for the advert." And later, when he titled the live stream video, "A slap in the face for Sphere Earth Coriolis." In the face? I hope not. He even made a video showing his daughter with a mock bandage around her head. That further suggests he might have actually hit her head or her face. Along with the pathetic claim that the sound came through someone else's microphone. He actually claimed it was his co-presenter's microphone. Nathan, you and we all are defined by our actions. And these actions define you as truly repulsive. But don't go just yet. I've got more for you. I said at the start of this video that I have a more general point to make, so listen up. Raising a child is a great responsibility and a very important job, especially in the early years, in the very early years. Children learn a lot more when they're preschool age than many parents imagine. In my opinion, you are making a real hash of parenting. Firstly, your general behaviour in these so-called debates. The example above of you getting angry at a guest on one of your live streams is not an isolated one. You do it often. Now, I don't listen to that many of your live streams, and only rarely have I listened to a full-length one. But I've heard you lose your temper and become abusive on several occasions. Actually, quite a large number. It's one of the reasons that I stop listening to your live streams, is I just hear you going into an abusive tirade, and I think, oh, what's the point? He ain't listening to what the other person is saying. I've also noticed that your daughter is often in the room at the same time. So when you clip out to do a little publicity push to ask people to subscribe and so on, your daughter I've seen your daughter on several occasions. I know that you have a no swearing policy on your live streams, presumably because you don't want your daughter hearing bad language. That's admirable. But do you really think that hearing you yelling abuse, calling people stupid or moron or thicko, does less harm to her development than hearing the occasional swear word? Secondly, the time you spend debating Flat Earth, or so-called debating Flat Earth. The smacking incident happened in debate number 424. Many of your debates, including this one, are over 2 hours long, and others are 1 hour long. So it's reasonable to assume that you've actually had live streams of 600 or 700 hours over the last year or so. I can't remember when the debates actually started, but it's not that long ago. I know you also spend time online with your co-presenters, Ranty, Riley, and presumably others, Chris Monk and people like that in the past, preparing the debates and reviewing what you think passes for evidence. And it's been very clear that you, on occasions when things have been presented, it's not the first time that you've heard that presentation. That's a lot of hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours, when your daughter sees you paying much more attention to your iPad than you do to her. She also sees you getting angry and shouting abusive comments at this inanimate electronic device. Now, I don't know whether you use an iPad. I think you use an iPad. I don't know whether you use a computer as well, or various devices. It doesn't matter. I realise that many fathers spend little time with their young children because they're out at work and the children are often asleep when they come home. But you're not in that position. And you are teaching your daughter that you would rather shout abuse at strangers or at an electronic device than spend time playing with her. I applaud the fact that you are, for at least some of the time, a house husband, for want of a better phrase, that you take time at home with your daughter, presumably whilst your wife or partner are out working. That is to be applauded. But I can't applaud the way you're doing it and what you're subjecting her to whilst you're on these live streams. The next point, and again, these points apply to other parents of who believe in the flat Earth. Your claimed belief in flat Earth, and I say claimed belief. You claim to think that the Earth is flat, or at least that the scientific consensus that it is a roughly spherical shaped planet is wrong. Now, I'm not sure whether you really believe this or are just pretending. But either way, your behaviour is likely to have a very bad effect on your daughter's development and life. Now, as I say, I'm not sure whether you really believe the position from which you argue or not. If I had to choose, I would say that you know the Earth is not flat, and that you also know the current scientific consensus is correct. I think that you are an intelligent enough person, because you don't have to be very intelligent to actually realize this. But if that's true, that means you are, or will be, when she's a little older, teaching your daughter that it is okay to lie to people, that it is okay to ignore evidence and to claim that untrue things are true just to get a bit of money, or because you just enjoy doing it. And we'll talk more about money later. What sort of lesson is that to teach anyone? That it's okay to lie, that it's okay to say, I know this isn't true, but I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours claiming it is true and abusing people over it just because I want to, or because I want to get a bit of money. It's not a lesson children should be learning. If, on the other hand, you truly do believe that the Earth is not a roughly spherical planet, then I'm afraid you're doing no better as a parent. In order to truly believe this, you must be choosing to ignore all the available evidence to the contrary. You are, or will be, teaching your daughter that it is okay to believe stuff that isn't true, just because you want to. You're teaching her that expert knowledge can be rejected at the drop of a hat, that scientific evidence can be rejected out of hand for no better reason than you don't want it to be true. Not only that, but you will also be teaching her that it is okay to pretend that you have greater knowledge than all the experts that have ever lived. So which is it, Nathan? Are you lying about your belief in flat Earth? Or are you pretending to know more about the Earth and the universe than all the scientists in human history combined? And no, that is not an ad populum fallacy. Try thinking about it. I'm not arguing that because all the scientists now have come to an agreement, that it is the fact that all of them have come to that agreement that is the reason you should accept it, or anybody should accept it. I'm saying that all the evidence comes to that same conclusion. Regardless of which category you fall into, you and your channel are also preying on vulnerable people. And this is the next point I want to make. So let me explain. It's clear that you generate some income from your YouTube activity. Now, I've no idea how much, but you have merchandise that you advertise, and you will get some advertising revenue and some donations. Now, of those areas of income, only the advertising revenue is not necessarily targeted at vulnerable people. Whether you truly believe the Earth is flat or not, you are, or will be, teaching your daughter that it is okay to get money from people by being dishonest. Flat Earth falls into the same category as astrology, homeopathy, faith healing, fortune telling, psychic mediums, etc. These are all professions, in inverted commas, that claim special knowledge about the universe without a single scrap of supporting evidence. They all seek to exploit vulnerable people by promising something that has no supporting evidence and is almost certainly, and by that I mean 99.9 recurring as long as you like % certain, untrue. You are, or will be, teaching your daughter that it is okay to get money from people by promising something you know you cannot deliver. Some, perhaps most, of those people will be vulnerable in some way, either through mental health, their age or lack of age, loneliness, lack of intelligence, alcohol or drug use, etc. You're teaching her that it's okay to exploit vulnerable people just to make some money. Is that a good lesson to teach your daughter? The next parenting error. You are impairing her life opportunities. If you do teach your daughter that the Earth is not a roughly spherical planet and that there is a massive science-based conspiracy to trick everyone, and she should not believe what she learns in science class at school, and that maths isn't reality, you'll be having a seriously negative effect on her life opportunities. School science should not just be about learning facts and theories. It is also about learning critical thinking. Learning not to accept that something is true just because you are told it, but because there is real evidence to back up those claims. And to be able to examine that evidence and the evidence for contrary positions and come to a logical, sensible conclusion. The next generation will have some huge decisions to make about our planet, ones that the current generation is busy messing up in big style. Things like global warming, waste management, potential pandemics. Can you imagine an Ebola outbreak in a first world country? A country with high population density and ease of population movement. It doesn't bear thinking about. And as Africa and other third world locations become more like first world countries, one of those outbreaks is going to happen. And it probably won't be in my lifetime. I hope not. But people are going to have to deal with it and prepare for it, be ready for it. The exploitation of space for resources and for warfare. The continued spread of nuclear weapons. North Korea has nuclear weapons. Iran may get nuclear weapons one day. There will be other countries who decide to get nuclear weapons, and it will not be possible to stop them. If the next generation is going to tackle these issues and many more, they need to be able to make sensible, critical assessments of what the scientific knowledge actually is. I haven't mentioned vaccines. I haven't mentioned a number of things. We see currently the same sort of thinking that predominates in the flat earth, affecting people's opinions about global warming and vaccinations. And that may well extend in the future to waste management solutions and energy production and the use of space and preparing for pandemics and so on. Decisions like that need to be made by an informed population with really good critical thinking skills. People who can actually assess what they're being told in a sensible way and come to the right conclusion. Now, flat earthers like to pretend that they are the ones who are being skeptical and demonstrating good critical thinking, but nothing could be further from the case. Flat earthers frequently commit most of the logical fallacies. They cherry pick, they quote mine, they argue special pleading, they make ad hominem attacks, and they always argue from ignorance. Show us the curve, said the flat earthers. So soundly did. And you either ignore it or make false accusations about him, ad hominem attacks. Before soundly, the curve was shown in 1948 using a modified V2 rocket, which went up and took photographs of the Earth. Then by NASA, the Russian Space Agency, JAXA, ESA, and others. But you just reject them all as massive must be in on it conspiracy. Prove R, the flat earthers say. So it is proved using sound mathematics, verifiable data. But you reject maths as being invalid. You say it's not valid. And the data is unverified, regardless of the facts, regardless of where that data came from. You just reject it. Show the horizon drops below eye level with altitude, say the flat earthers. So Sean Hufford, Red's Rhetoric, Wolfie 2060, and others do just that, but you ignore or reject their evidence out of hand without providing any counter evidence of your own. Demonstrate that gravity is real, say the flat earthers. Well, Cavendish did that a long time ago, but dozens of others have done so since, using his experiment or in other ways. There are numerous examples of demonstrations of gravity, from the hammer and feather on the moon to Brian Cox's vacuum chamber TV program. And even my own simple demonstrations, and there are more of those coming, by the way, yet you choose to reject or ignore this, just out of hand. You are not teaching children to be critical thinkers, or even to think at all. You disgust me. This applies to all flat earthers with children, not just you, Nathan Oakley. But Nathan, your behaviour recently, well, has just added a little bit of fuel to this fire. I'll finish on a note that I haven't written. This is a genuine plea. Think about what you're doing. Think about your daughter's future. Go and stand in front of a mirror and have a really good, long conversation with yourself about what it means to be a father. You can always change. People do change their behaviors and they change their attitudes and their approach. Carry on being skeptical about what science reveals about the universe, by all means. Many things that scientists currently think do fall into the category of speculation based on incomplete evidence. And we are right to be skeptical about it. But it is not right to simply reject evidence because you don't like it. I'm finished. I will not be engaging with you unless somehow, some way, I hear that you have altered your attitude and your way of dealing with the flat earth debate. And I would also need to know for sure, or as sure as I can be, you've stopped hitting your child